Welcome to Danny's podcast.
This is the Redefining Plastics Podcast. Welcome to the Redefining Plastics Podcast. My name's Justin Riney. Got another interesting one today. I had a couple people ask me about advanced recycling, and that's where we're going today. We got the folks from ecoCarbon with us, and really appreciate you guys joining. Why don't you tell us and the listeners about yourself, how you got in the chemical recycling industry, maybe a little bit about the company.
Sure. Thank you, Justin, for inviting us in this podcast. I am Dr. Dipendu Saha, founder and CEO of ecoCarbon. With me, my longtime partner and Chief Business Officer, Paul Gray, with us. So my background is I'm a chemical engineer by training and I hold a PhD degree. Throughout my career, I worked in the DOE's Department of Energy's National Lab and academia. And I am an expert in carbon-based materials. Based on the expertise, I published several publications, scientific conferences, patents, and I also obtained several research grants from governments and organizations. I work as an expert reviewer from multiple countries, including United States, Canada, Iceland, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. And while I was working on researching on these carbon materials, I discovered an interesting phenomena of producing carbons from EPS. And based on that discovery, we created this company. We will come back to this, the discovery, the history of discovery, but I let first Paul talk about himself.
Thank you, Dipendu. My name is Paul Gray, and I've been working with the DOE lab network a few years. This is where I met Dipendu. That was more than 10 years ago. And then we had the opportunity to do side projects since then. And when Dipendu went through his discoveries, or I understood that it was time to initiate a company and go forward. So my background is science and business. So I'm giving support to Dipendu on all those aspects.
I always find it interesting because all the best scientists I've ever met struggle with the business. So it's always good to have somebody that does a little bit of both well. So that way you're actually going to make money in whatever business that you're creating. So that's a very specific skill set that not everybody has. So good for you guys for coming together. Really interested in this. So full disclosure, I was a little nervous about this podcast recording. We had a pre-call, probably 3-4 weeks ago now. And I was a little nervous about the kind of the nature of your business and what you're doing, how it's not exactly plastics to plastics. But the more we talked and the more we learned about what you're doing, you're taking plastics and you're making it into new valuable materials that will be used in industry. I did a reaction video for this week that's actually up right now, where I talked a lot about the fact that why do we have all this discussion about upcycling, downcycling? Who cares? As long as it actually is made back into a new product and it's not taking new raw materials, we shouldn't have an issue, right? So appreciate y'all working with me and letting me work through my concerns, and really excited to talk about this today because I think one thing, and we'll get into this as we discuss, there's a lot of pushback from NGOs on advanced recycling. And that's what we're going to talk about today. It's a fraud. It doesn't work. And you guys are out there doing it. And that's exciting. And that's why we wanted to have you on today. So I'd like each of you, start with Paul. If you want to just a little bit about your background, where you're from. I like the audience to get to know the people themselves and not just the business person / scientist. I want people to know who you are.
Yes, I'm originally from France. This is where I did my study. As I said, I have a background in science, specifically in physics. And I had also a master's degree in business. And then, I spent many years as a project lead on R&D project in private industry that was sponsored by the DOE. So technically, my job was doing proposals and executing some projects that were related to carbon fiber manufacturing. And I think I've been quite successful in doing those projects. And now it is time to go with something else. And I found this project very relevant because it addresses multiple issues, and I think it has a lot of meaning. So then that's the reason why I wanted to switch to this project.
Yes, I mentioned earlier, so my background is chemical engineering, and I always fascinated by the carbons and their synthesis. So unlike Paul, my exposure to carbon is only porous carbons, nanoporous carbons, and graphite-based materials. So when I was working on the different types of feedstock to produce carbons, I came to know about EPS, knowing that it's very abundant and it's quite there's a lot of waste of EPS. So I wanted to make carbon out of EPS. I knew that the very potential. Initially, I failed because unlike other feedstocks, EPS does not give the carbon. So with a little bit of magic in chemistry, I stabilized the structure, and it gave very high carbons with very unique properties. And from that moment, the idea of business came to my mind because we knew that this type of carbons are very expensive. And while EPS is very abundant, we can combine those two to make a good business. And then I remember Paul, we worked earlier in Oakland National Lab, but we were in touch doing a small projects. But I know he had a business background, so I thought he'd be a very good partner for the business. And we started this ecoCarbon.
All right.
Still working together.
And where are you from originally?
Yes, I'm originally from the beautiful country of India.
I figured that
This
part.
is it.
Like regionally. Like
Yes, because right now I hold a U.S. citizenship.
I ask everybody the exact same question when they come on this podcast. What do each of you think when you hear the word plastics? So I'm going to start with Paul.
So for me, it's not very original. When I hear the word plastic, I immediately think about polymer and petroleum derivative. That's my first thought. But then I also realize that it is one of the most important civilization changer, because you can clearly define the standard of living before plastics and after. The humanity is just now able to manufacture so many goods that were not available before. That changes everything. So that's my thought.
Yeah, World War II would have been way different if we didn't have plastics. All the way back to then, it has allowed for the technological revolution that we enjoy today. And I don't think a lot of people understand that.
Since you're referring to World War II, that's one of my immediate thought is just the tires.
Yeah.
Synthetic tires. It's just it's so basic, but it's so useful.
Yes, for me, similar. My thoughts are very similar to carbon. Plastics are polymers. These are the new chemicals. So when I think about plastic, I think of this innovation. And as you know, the applications are countless. Plastics change the world. No matter how much blame we put on plastic, my thought is that we cannot live our daily life and industrial life without plastic. And when I think about the plastic pollution, I really think it is an opportunity to do many things out of the plastic waste. Either you can do recycling or make a completely new materials from plastic. So it's a blessing.
Doesn't mean we don't have issues and we don't need to resolve for waste in some cases. We definitely need to resolve for litter. These kind of projects that you're talking about can do exactly that, because you're taking materials that are recycled today. I want to be clear about that. EPS is recycled, and a lot of it's recycled, specifically transport packaging in the US and certain European nations. But this could allow us to recycle more and significantly more, which that's exciting to me because I'm in the polystyrene industry. So I want to see more and more and more polystyrene recycled. And we just started the Polystyrene Recycling Alliance. And these are the kind of things that we're really interested in and very excited about. So really interested to talk through. We kind of talked a little bit already about what ecoCarbon is, what the company's about, and how it came about. You guys knew each other. So I think you both said DOE a couple times. So we're talking Department of Energy in
That's
the
correct.
US. How do you get involved in working for the Department of Energy? Did they pull you out of a university, or how did that all work out?
Well, regarding myself, that was through a common application process. They were looking for somebody to process carbon fiber, and I began this way. And I worked many years in this environment as the on-site and then as a contractor.
Similar to Paul, so after completing my PhD, I was looking for a postdoc opportunity. I saw the advertisement, I applied, and after the interview, they accepted me. I worked on initially the porous carbon materials for hydrogen storage, and then
Okay.
synthesizing porous carbon from different other precursors, for example, lignin and its application in battery.
There's probably some sensitivity in the question I'm going to ask next. So whatever you're comfortable with answering, what can you tell us about the technology and kind of how it works just from a high level? Are we talking pyrolysis? If you can just give us like broad strokes, what we're talking about and how it works.
Sure. The key technique of producing any carbon materials is a carbonization. It's basically a fancy term. It basically means you heat or burn any organic material at a high temperature, 700 and above, and in absence of. Most of the organic materials like plastic can yield to carbon, but EPS is one of the materials that does not. At high temperature, EPS completely degrades to different gases. To change that, what we did, we discovered a chemical process to stabilize EPS by partly modifying its structure. And then when you carbonize it, it will yield to very high carbon. You are successful to extract about 90%. Now, depending on the different carbonization conditions and the mixing ingredients, we make different types of. So far, we are successful to make synthetic graphite, ultra-high surface area activated carbon, and molecular chips out of EPS. We're working on different other products, for example, the carbon-supported catalyst. So based on our technology, we filed a couple of US patents and PCT patent applications, and we expect to submit more patent applications coming days and months.
Paul, anything to add to that, or did that cover most of it?
Well, it's quite complete. That is true. But I would insist that one of the specificity of the project is to be profitable, not by greed, but just to make something that makes sense. And
you guys are running a business, right? You got to make money in order to make the business work.
So I'm always thinking about recycling. Yes, okay. You have many processes that people have the hope that it will be recycled, or people are doing a lot of effort in sorting their waste. And then eventually it's not separated, and then everything is gathered in single mainstream and then goes to landfill or to incineration. So the goal is to avoid that, is also to avoid to live on government subside, is to make something that works. And one of the key of the process is what Dipendu said. The products we generate, based on their specificity, are quite expensive on the market. And that makes that cheap material be valuable to be effectively repurposed. And that's a key in our business. Generating enough value to make the process viable and making it flourishing. So that is, I would say, it's not very scientific, but it's a necessity.
It's helpful for people that are not scientific to understand exactly what you're talking about. You're effectively taking plastics, but in this case, we're talking EPS. You're stabilizing it, you're heat stabilizing it, and then you're putting it under extreme heat, and I'm assuming pressure, to break it. So no pressure, so it's not in a pressure vessel. But you're taking the heat and then you're breaking it back into its base carbon and then making new products.
Yeah, actually stabilization is a chemical stabilization. It's not exactly stabilization. After that, we will simply eat it.
Okay.
High temperature is the product.
And you said graphite, activated carbons, and things like that. So what kind of industries are you targeting for your customer base to take this product back into?
There's many industries that is actually using carbon products. There's any type of industry of purification. Could be water, but it could be gases, let's say for gas separation, or even solid phases could be purified with this type of carbon products. I'm especially thinking about soil remediation on the polluted side. So that's one aspect of it. But also the food industry is using activated carbons for food purification, just to get constant quality in the production of the beverages mostly. But there's many other industries. There's gold mining. There is the battery space. There's supercapacitors, and we'll talk about that a bit later because those are of high interest for us. So there's just a full panel of potential application for those carbon products.
You operational yet? Pilot? Or where in the process are you right now?
Well, we are still at lab scale.
Lab scale.
Unfortunately, that's a big
It takes
challenge
time,
because
right?
it
You got to
takes
get
time.
money.
Well,
Yeah.
what we've done is we've been successful in producing prototypes and issue some patents. Non-provisional patents have been filed, but then to get the approval by prospects and customers, you need to prove that the process operates constantly or at a significant scale. Just because the customers need to do their own test with the material, and this goes beyond our simple means. So we are looking for partners to support the development of our company, to technically help us to do the pilot work. We know that the process is relatively simple and quite under control, so we don't expect a major hurdle by scaling up, but it still needs to be done. We cannot skip that one.
I'd like to add one thing is that regarding the operational stage, we do have one letter of intent LOI in place from one manufacturer, and we also working with another company who will test one of our products in their facility. And those two are the good prospects.
Are you guys thinking more of like a licensing type business, or are you actually looking to own, operate, and manufacture?
I think it will be market dependent. Very likely, licensing will be the straightforward solution in many circumstances, but still, it requires specific conditions. And I'm thinking about licensing if we can find the industrial partner that is really interested into the technology. And if we are talking about markets that are difficult to penetrate without experience of it. And I'm especially thinking about Southeastern Asia, where there's probably the largest EPS issue to manage. The highest percentage of EPS that is produced worldwide and leader worldwide is in Southeastern Asia.
Well, that area is a problem for plastic waste in general, not just EPS, but yeah.
It truly is.
Yeah.
And otherwise, we are thinking about contracting production to avoid to have to set a plant and then take care of the production and the sale of material. So we'll use both strategies. That's our goal.
So why EPS?
It's a very good question. So as I said earlier, because of my long background, I would like to jump into the most problematic part first.
Okay.
So other kind of plastics, for example, think about it, PVC, or let's say polypropylene, polyethylene, those kind of common plastics, their patents and publications are producing carbon from those plastics.
Okay.
EPS, there is none. So I became curious, why not? So I started working on it. Then immediately I understood the reason because
It's
EPS
light.
does not use to carbon. Not only light, it does not produce any carbon.
Yeah.
So I
It's
did this
light. It's
declaration.
difficult to do. So just you're pretty much explaining EPS recycling in a nutshell, but from a different angle.
Well, I think the fact that it is light is the economical limitation of its recycling. But there's also a technical challenge. The fact that it's sublimates during the process of carbonization leaves you without any material. So you have nothing in hand, nothing to sell.
Yeah.
So the value is zero. And this is where ecoCarbon comes in. So it is possible to get some material, and this material has the product has interesting properties. So that's the reason why we can set a business. But the fact that it is light is that's the reason why for such a long time, just a fraction of EPS is recycled. And with a process like ours, we hope that this will change.
I think if you look, like I said, the transport packaging, that industry is pretty well established for recycling, but you got the entire food service sector that needs help. And there is food service recycling. You got densification locations where people can drop stuff off, make it into the ingots, and then makes it economically viable to ship around. And I'm actually making new products out of that right now, and a lot of other companies are, but we need more of it. So this is exactly what we need. We need new markets. We need new responsible end markets, to use EPR language, specifically in California. Because if this is going back into industry, that activated carbon was coming from somewhere. Can you talk to me a little bit about, if you can, where the production of these activated carbons and graphites come from today, and like what are you offsetting by doing the recycled material in the way that you're talking about?
Those carbon products are produced mostly by China. And for economical reasons. On the top of that, they have appropriate resources, especially regarding natural graphite. They have a lot of natural graphite over there. But natural graphite is something you can mine a little bit all around the world. It's not that scarce. But back to the activated carbons, then I think China has something like 70% of worldwide production. And then probably India and Thailand share between themselves something like 10 to 15%. And the remaining part of the production is scattered around the world. But the vast majority happens technically in Southeastern Asia.
Is that mined as well, the activated carbon?
No, it is mostly the product of the conversion of the biomass. One of the most common precursors is coconut husk.
Okay.
And the second common precursor is a petroleum pitch material that is converted to activated carbons. And those are quite expensive process. Well, it depends. The material that, in fact, you have both. Both situations are possible. You can get quite cheap process, but with a poor performance, which is sufficient in a vast majority of the applications. But when you require high performance material, especially for energy storage, then the process is becoming very expensive, and only a few companies are able to produce this type of material. And there's probably just about a dozen of companies that is worldwide and is able to produce material that is fit for battery application.
And the products that you're looking to make would be fit for those high-end applications. You're educating me here, because I don't know anything about the carbon markets. This is way outside of my sphere. So I like learning through this podcast, which is great. And this is a learning experience for me.
Yeah, it's not a plastic anymore. Yeah. And regarding the environmental consideration, it's very important, because EPS, the drawback of first, the EPS is a fantastic material. It's light, it is stable, the mechanical properties are very decent. Even, I would say, they're awesome regarding its weight and specific mass. So then that makes it an outstanding material. And on the top of that, it is very stable. But that's also a drawback, because when you have to liter it, it stays for a very long time in the environment. And if you traditionally recycle it, then you recycle it into polystyrene, and then you're just delaying the fact that one day you will have to burn it. With our process, you convert it into carbon, a carbon structure, and carbon is neutral. It's inert, environmental beginning. So then you definitely fix this problem of long-term degradation.
And I think that falls perfect. So converting EPS, or in general, plastic to carbon is a very good strategy, because once you come out of the plastic, then it is so much benign, environmentally stable. Moreover, think about it. EPS causes the environmental pollution, but once we make the carbon out of EPS, it not only stops the pollution, but you can use the carbon for the pollution remediation purposes. For example, you use a water filter, water pitcher, inside those there's a activated carbon inside. You can produce the similar carbons from EPS. So the same EPS is now used for the environmental remediation purposes. So that's must be a fantastic approach to compound EPS.
So I wouldn't be doing my job here well if I didn't bring up the next topic, because the one thing that everybody's concerned about is microplastics. So you're talking about water filtration with burnt up plastics. And I guarantee you, somebody listening to this right now is thinking, that's just going to be more microplastics into the water. What would you say to that?
The answer is absolutely not.
Okay.
The microplastic is produced by the gradual degradation or corrosion of the plastic in the marine and water environment. But when you convert plastic to carbon, it's no longer plastic, it's a carbon skeleton. It will never ever produce the microplastic inside the pitcher or in else.
That's good. That's going to be one less thing for somebody to come after you with, which is always good. So it kind of brings me to my next topic. So I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the common narrative right now is that advanced recycling or chemical recycling or everything that you guys are trying to do is a fraud. I hear that a lot. So it's not real, it can't scale, it won't be anything. The Attorney General in California sued Exxon, saying that they're lying about their advanced recycling facility. I know you don't want to wade into those waters. I don't really either. But what I'm saying is you guys are making new products out of plastics that are not new plastics. And that seemed to be Bonta's big complaint about what Exxon was doing. That all that was going into jet fuel. And well, at least that's what he says. I don't think that's accurate, but that's what he said. And that's why he's suing. So are you concerned at all about the fact that you're making new products out of plastics and want to call it recycled material, but it's not plastics to plastics? Concerned at all that somebody's going to take issue with that?
Oh, it's definitely not a problem. I would say recycling is a necessity. Regarding the rate of production of plastic, if you don't take care of the waste, then it is already a big problem, but it can only be worse going down the road. And now, regarding the strategy to use, I'm not sure there's a good or a bad strategy. You have to do whatever is possible with technical means. So back to conventional recycling, it is what it is, and it works in many circumstances. There's plenty of plastics that are easily recyclable, especially all the thermoplastics. This thermoset is a little bit more tricky. But then it's even better if you can repurpose the material in the end. So just like Exxon is doing by converting it into a fuel, because then you don't have, you convert it into energy and you don't have waste anymore in hand to take care of. And we are in this approach, we are converting it into not energy, but in another material, and that's okay. And I would say if you want to handle such a complex problem, you need multiple tools to be successful to tackle it.
All of the above solutions. Yes, I completely
kind
agree.
Of. It is exactly like if you want to go for fishing. In some circumstances, you might need a net. In other circumstances, you might need just a pool, or in other circumstances, you just have a bow. So then you use arrows and bows. Okay, but all of those are tools, and more tools you have, more likely you will be successful, more likely you will be able to fit the need of a market. Because once again, you can have a given strategy and then implement it, but if that fits only one type of market, if that market one day collapses, so then your recycling loop is dead. it's always better to have multiple options, and then you create a more resilient ecosystem. In this case, we're talking about recycling, but that's the best approach. We are hoping that other people will develop other strategies, and we will welcome any progress in this aspect. It can only be a good news. So no, I would say no, it's not a fraud. It's not perfect, but it's not a fraud.
No. Yeah. And recycling as it stands today isn't perfect either. So any improvement, any new technologies, breakthrough technologies are needed if we want to increase our scale of recycling. And I don't think anybody's ever going to argue that we're going to be able to recycle 100% of plastic production right away or even ever. I think the goal is to steadily increase and to reduce the amount of material going to landfill. And you guys are looking to do exactly that. So I applaud it. I really do. So this wasn't on the outline, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you're not comfortable with answering that, that's fine. But I just want to throw it out there. The whole, let's assume that AG Bonta was correct and 100% of Exxon's advanced recycling material was going to jet fuel. Would you have a problem with that? I don't necessarily, because you're offsetting fossil fuel production, so I wouldn't assume that that's a problem. But just anything to add to that? Any? I know you both said no, but I was curious if you had any thoughts.
Well, imagine they are able to recycle 100% of the EPS, so then we would be without feedstock technically. So that means our business would not fit a new reality. Well, I do not have much concern about that because we are far from this situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's still plenty of room for us to operate. But even if that would be the case, we could still, because the difference of value between the product we create and the cost of the feedstock is so big that we could always order fresh material and process fresh material to get the material, the carbon materials we want to sell. So then I would say no, it wouldn't be a problem, whatever the situation is.
Yeah, I'll be eager to know the exact reason for this sue, because the purpose, I assume that the key purpose of recycling is that you need to remove the waste plastic from the environment. So
Yes.
if you are taking the waste plastic out of the environment, then what you are doing is up to you. So if you make a new plastic or make some other chemicals, I don't know the exact legality of the issue, what happened in there, but my comment is that if the purpose was to make the environment clean by taking their waste out of the environment, then to me, that's a perfect approach. And as Paul mentioned, making a value-added material creates a high economic difference, which will help to extract more plastic from the environment and making it more.
Going to be some material that can't be used for plastic production throughout the yield of the actual process. And that's going to go to other products. We're not talking necessarily to jet fuel, but it'll go to other things, as far as I understand. And let me I should have prefaced it by saying, as far as I understand. But yeah, I don't see any issue with it. But there is a hierarchy, right? We want plastics to plastics first. If that doesn't work, or we don't have enough demand, then exactly what you guys are talking about is right there, to take up all that additional material, which is great. And then fuel production, that's probably pretty far down the hierarchy, but it's still keeping material from being in the a landfill or in the environment. So I don't personally have an issue with it, because we're offsetting fossil fuel production, which I think everybody's okay with, right? That's what we want. So I don't know.
Better than nothing.
Yeah.
That's correct. I heard that some other company also taking the polystyrene and converting to the monomer styrene and making some other products, even polystyrene. So regarding the belief that the plastic recycling and environment, I think another option is that there should be a little bit of education on the science, how things work. If the I would say the common people understand the basic science behind what is plastic, what is carbon, what is the background chemical inside those, then the false notion may be gone, and they truly understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a big issue here in the U.S. Science literacy is at an all-time low. I would say just literacy in multiple topics are at an all-time low, and everybody's very tribal. It's I'm Democrat, I'm Republican, neither of the two shall meet, and whatever you say that hits my biases, I love. Whatever you say that doesn't meet with my biases, you're the devil, you're evil, and I'm going to fight with you. And there's no more dialogue, there's no more communication between groups. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that nobody understands any of this at all. And they hear somebody speaking in we'll call it an eloquent way, or they can communicate things well, and they make a pretty YouTube video. And then everybody's like, well, I already think plastics are terrible. This person's saying plastics are terrible in a very beautiful way. It must be true. That's the issue. Nobody truly understands any of this. And they have very strong opinions. And that's frustrating, right? Because you guys are scientists. I'm not, but I'm sure if you were to talk to let's say we put together a focus group of 40 people and you started talking about what you wanted to do, 0 of them would understand what you were talking about. And that's a shame.
It's not an ideal situation.
No.
But of course, to be able to understand a topic, first, almost any issue is relatively complex, more or less, based on the situation. But whatever you want to understand or to practice, it needs time and attention and training. Most of the time. There's very few disciplines that escape this. But more generally, I would say, whatever you think, if you want to solve an issue or build something, more tools, more strategies you have, more likely you will be able to get a decent result. I don't remember who was the teacher, the professor of university, who was saying this on a podcast, but he was saying that if you want to build a complex system, you need bricks of like Legos and assemble them. But more different type of bricks you have available, more likely you will be able to do a nice and complex structure and be successful. And I think it's a very good image.
Yeah, I think if you can break people away from TikTok long enough to actually read up on something, that's step number 1. I think there was a study recently that showed the attention span of Americans since social media, and then specifically over the last couple of years with TikTok and short videos on YouTube, it went from like several minutes to less than like 15 seconds now. I don't have it right in front of me, but we pay attention to things less and less. And that's why people are just watching really short. I think there was an attempt to make a streaming platform was all going to be short TV shows, like 15 minutes or less, and that thing failed miserably. But I think if they brought that back in about 2 years, it's going to be pretty successful because people don't want to pay attention. They want to be spoon-fed. And I think I railed the other day on Americans. I pretty much do that every day because I am one and I don't care if I say things that piss people off. But we don't have there's not a lot of effort among Americans to truly learn new things and communicate with each other and grow. It's very much how can I consume more of what I care about and focus more on what I think and not as much of let me learn what somebody else is saying and how they think, which is interesting because there's this huge push for diversity and diversity of thought. But when it comes down to it, if you look at those people that are pushing this diversity and diversity of thought, if you think something differently than them, they immediately shut you down. It's like, well, you want diversity, you want different thoughts. We should be learning from each other, even if you don't agree. Like, I talk to people all the time that I don't agree with, but I feel like I'm learning something from them every single time. And my viewpoints change constantly. And that's why I want to give you guys the platform to talk about what you're doing. So hopefully one person will actually pay attention to it. And maybe that will start to spread that message that, you know what, plastics aren't that bad. We've got solutions to recycle it. We're trying to scale it. Help us. Stop fighting against us. And I think that's kind of where my head's at. But I really want to know, from your opinion, how big of a business do you think this could be? Is this something that you think could be like tacked on to multiple different production facilities, kind of a hub and spoke kind of thing? Just give us a broad strokes on kind of what you think this could be long term.
Well, it's not easy to assess what it could be in volume, physical volume of material, but it's relatively easy to get an idea of what it is with the market size, because it's easier to find numbers, economical numbers. And well, if we are talking about just the three products we are able to create just right away as of today, and we can probably add some in the future. Let's say for the activated carbon, the market's worldwide market is estimated to be $4 billion, with a compounded annual growth rate of approximately 4.5%. So that's already a pretty...
It's one market.
That's just one market.
Yeah.
The carbon molecular sieves is a little bit smaller. It's 1 billion approximately, but with a similar growth rate. And the synthetic graphite is $10 billion with a 5.5 annual growth rate. And those markets are steadily growing for decades. So we assume that it will continue doing so. So then there's potential of using a lot of feedstock material to supply these markets. And I would call the attention on two specific markets that are growing faster than those averages. I was thinking about the lithium-ion batteries that use graphite for their anode structure. I think it's about 10% of the weight of the total battery is the anode itself. So that, and I would say there's also the supercapacitors, that uses activated carbon for its anodes, its electrode structure. And those two markets are growing between 15 to 20% per year. So then there's a big demand of carbon structures. And that means that can convert quite a bit of EPS to supply those markets.
And you'd be offsetting mining and a bunch of other things by doing it. So win-win all around. I'd like to give everybody that comes on the opportunity to discuss anything that they want that we haven't covered today. If there's something specific that you really wanted to mention, maybe about the fundraising, how do people get in touch with you, all that kind of stuff. This floor is yours.
Yes, I would say the first thing is, what I would say is very important to try to diversify the strategies of recycling or doing any material, let's say, in general. It's always very beneficial to have multiple streams of material and select down the road which one are the most efficient. It's just like a company. No one single company wants one single supplier and one single customer. So it is the same thing if you want to produce material. So then for this reason, I would say let's encourage diversity. Then regarding the type of connection we would like to get is anybody who is interested in either recycling EPS or who is looking for activated carbon and synthetic graphite of high quality. This is the type of people we would like very much being in touch with.
So I'd like to say that as we discussed earlier, so we are still in the lab scale. So we like to go to the pilot scale followed by commercial production. So any of the viewers are interested to partner with us, share opinion, or provide us the financial support. So all are welcome at this point. In order to contact us, we have the website www.ecocarbons.org. There's a plural in there, ecoCarbons. You can contact through email, contact@ecocarbons.org. People can contact us by our individual LinkedIn accounts. My name is Diphendu Saha. Paul's name is Hippolyte Grape. So they can find us by LinkedIn as well. And so any advice, any shared up opinions are always welcome from the viewers.
Yeah, collaboration. That's my key for 2025. How do we collaborate to make recycling globally better? And I think there's a lot to that. And I'll get you connected to our group in the PSRA too. We still got to talk through how we can help you guys. I'm sure our membership will be very excited to talk about some additional outlets for polystyrene recycling. But really appreciate it, guys. I learned a lot today. I always like that when I have these kind of discussions and I learn things, and learned about new markets that I didn't know anything about, which is always helpful for me. But yeah, really wish you luck. Hope that everything goes well and you're making a big splash relatively soon. And I'll have you guys also send me an email after this, which is kind of your contact information and website links and all that I can put in the description of the show notes, so people can get in touch with you. But yeah, so this has been the Redefining Plastics podcast. My name's Justin Riney. Thank you to the ecoCarbons team for joining today, and everybody have a great night.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you so much for coming.
You want to learn more about the plastics industry, recycling, check out these other videos. Please like and subscribe.